China's entire economy is about to collapse. Let's talk about it. Hello everybody, Joe Warwick coming at you, and I'm going to give you 3 reasons why I believe China's entire economy is on the brink of destruction. And let's start with ghost cities. China is full of empty cities. We're talking about millions of buildings, apartments, and municipalities, entire cities that are completely empty. I actually visited China and I saw this firsthand. Every single city that we went to, we saw skyscrapers being built. We saw cranes on the horizon for as far as the eye could see. And every one of these buildings were empty. They weren't even finished. And I couldn't figure out for the life of me why they were building so many buildings and no one was living in them. Just to put this in perspective, in the last 3 years, China has used more concrete than the United States used in the entire 20th century. And then I learned why. See, in China, people do not invest in stocks. The Chinese government is pretty controlling and does not allow all of its citizens to buy stocks. So only about 7% of Chinese citizens invest in stocks. However, over 90% of Chinese citizens own real estate. It's one of the few things they can buy, and for decades they were told that their real estate values were guaranteed. You could buy real estate at any price and somebody else is going to come along and pay a higher price for that piece of real estate. However, they did not want to finish the real estate because in China, from what I understand, when you go in and you buy an apartment or you go in and you buy a house, you basically gut the entire house and you make it your own, because there are some superstitious beliefs that if you don't do that, you will inherit the positive or the negative from the previous tenant. So think about it. You're going to buy an apartment and you're not going to want to finish it, because if you finish that apartment, then whoever's going to buy the apartment has to refinish it and they're going to pay you less for that piece of real estate. And there's really no reason to rent the real estate because the rent is so low. By the time you pay to finish the house and you collect the rent, it's going to cost you more than what you'll make in selling the house because somebody has to come in and gut the house. So what we're seeing is people just buy empty concrete shells in the belief that one day someone will come along and pay more for that building. And they're leveraging at levels I've never seen before. In America, the average price to income multiple is between 4 and 5 times. The average is about 4.8 times. But in China, we're seeing these numbers hit 30 times, 40 times, even close to 50 times income. So that means if you were making $100,000, you'd be allowed to buy a $5 million property in the United States, the equivalent in China. That's insane. And buying a $5 million property that no one's going to live in, it's not going to produce any income for you, and you're never going to finish it, just boggles my mind. And unfortunately, a lot of the companies who are building these properties are not able to build more because China has changed the financial requirements. Now we're seeing large construction companies unable to pay their debts, and they're on the verge of collapse. Now, it doesn't mean that China can't come in and save them, because they are a fascist country and they don't mind putting money into the system, but this has become a massive real estate bubble that could burst at any time. Number 2, China's failed Belt and Road project. A few years ago, China decided they were going to help neighboring countries, and they were going to build what they call the Belt and Road Project to recreate the old Silk Road that China had hundreds of years ago. And in order to do this, that meant China had to lend roughly $1 trillion to countries who basically had no way to pay it back. See, in America, when we go into a country and we want to help that country, we will give on average, for every $1 of debt that we produce in that country, we give back $9 of aid. China's reversed that. For every $1 of aid they've given to the countries, they're asking for $9, or they're creating $9 of debt. And so we have country after country throughout Asia, throughout Africa, who have borrowed billions of dollars from China, and they have no way to pay this money back. Now, this is different than in China, when China is lending money to its citizens to build buildings inside China. That's one thing. That's what we just talked about with the ghost cities. Now we're talking about over $1 trillion spent in other countries outside of China, and these debts are going unpaid. This is a big problem for China. They are now the largest lender of money outside their country, and this could come back and bite them in a big way. Now, the first two issues have to do with money. There may be ways that China could print more dollars or forgive loans or do something financially to fix this problem. The last issue they have cannot be fixed financially, and that's their demographics. China is upside down with their demographics. By the year 2030, China's roughly 1.4 billion people will begin to contract. And we will see a country that is very heavily weighted on the elderly and the middle-aged. See, China created a One-Child Act back in the 80s, about a decade after Japan actually created the One-Child Act. And they basically told their citizens, you're allowed to have one kid. If you want to have more than one kid, it's going to cost you money. So most of their citizens got used to having one child. The other issue we have in China is the Chinese wanted male children and not female children. So if someone got pregnant and they had the money and they found out that that child was a female, they would simply abort that child and try their best to have a male child. So now the issue they have is they have over 33 million extra young men than young women. These 33 million men are never going to be able to get married inside China because there aren't enough females. And they have less kids every single year. So as we can see in this graph, they are running into a massive demographic issue that could bankrupt China. The Belt and Road issue is bad. The ghost city issue is terrible. But the idea that they will not have enough citizens to support their economy is frightening. And there's nothing they can do about it. They've changed the One-Child Act. They've gone to Chinese citizens and said, you can have 2 kids, you can have 3 kids. And the Chinese citizens have said, no, it costs way too much money. We're happy sticking with one child. So if China does not fix this, either through immigration or convincing their citizens to have more kids, they run the risk of basically running out of citizens. So between their ghost city issue, their $1 trillion Belt and Road failed project, and their demographics, China is on the verge of collapse. But what does this mean to you? We really aren't sure. We don't know. My best advice is you should not be investing in China. Do you know it's actually legal in China to defraud American business people? That is a legal practice. So I would stay away from Chinese businesses. I'd stay away from Chinese investments. I would not want to be putting any of my assets into Chinese real estate, Chinese companies. It probably will not benefit you in the short term or the long term to be putting your money into China. What does it mean for companies who are already there? What does it mean for the US stock market overall if China's economy does collapse? We don't know, but because we have the issue of Powell raising interest rates in the United States, all the countries around the world raising interest rates, and stock markets already on the verge of collapse, this is not good news overall. I want to keep my eye on this. Make sure you check back every week so we can follow up and see what is going to actually happen in China. Will they be able to weather this storm, and how will it affect your money? If you like videos like this, make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you're checking out some of my other videos. Turn on the notification bell so you get notified every time I post new videos. And as always, I'll see you next week.